azidi kutwanga, amalize ufisadi, na tunamwambia ashike rungu agonge kichwa, asipige mkia, kwa sababu hiyo nyoka itageuka na imuume.
All right, Honorable Mudavadi.
Yes.
Go ahead. Do you think that President Uhuru Kenyatta is doing the best to fight corruption and tame it?
At the moment, the impetus that we are seeing is positive. And the fight against corruption must be multi-pronged. We have the institutions that are investigative. We have institutions that deal with prosecution, and we have the judiciary. So all these, and then we have the citizens and we have parliament. So in this context, when I was encouraging Uhuru to maintain the momentum or even increase it, I was also conscious of the fact that there are a few things that we need to deal with. One is the capacity of all these institutions to deal with corruption.
Right.
Because we're having cases at the county government level, we're having cases at the national level. And our institutions, whether it is the Ethics Commission, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, whether it is the DCI, whether it is the police directly, where these institutions are also getting overstretched because there are so many cases that require attention. And you may find a single officer is being charged with the responsibility of investigating maybe 5-6 cases at the same time. Now, this can become extremely difficult and challenging to that individual and subsequently to the bigger institution.
So what do we do in order to strengthen these agencies?
So one of the things that we will do is that we need to resource them appropriately. And here, where there is some contradiction, is that the parliament, which is the majority, which is has a Jubilee majority, made one glaring mistake. Whether it was by design or whether it was unintentional, I do not know. But if you look at the budgetary allocation that is being assigned to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and then you look at the budgetary allocation that has gone to the DPP, then you look at the allocation that has gone to the DCI, then you ask yourself, when you compare that with the allocation that has gone to Parliament itself, then there is a serious mismatch. Because I think the DPP's department is being given something like 3.6 billion, ethics more or less the same, and Parliament itself allocated a very big chunk for itself.
However, one would argue, why should we increase their money if Kenyans are still yet to see results of their work, given the amount that they already have?
You need to resource these institutions. Let us make our institutions work. This is the most important thing I want to put across. But in the meantime, there are also other areas, because not everything is necessarily criminal. There are some issues that are purely weaknesses in terms of policy. And hence, the call in the sugar industry that we need a judicial commission of inquiry. I said this more than 3 months ago. People thought I was on the wrong path. Parliament has debated this sugar issue saga twice. Finally, nothing has come out of it. And the Speaker has said Parliament has no more time to discuss this sugar saga. A commission of inquiry would be within the remit of the President constitutionally. He would set it up. He would draw the terms of reference. He would give it a time frame, maybe 6 months, to deliver its message.
Precisely my next question.
Yes.
We see the sugar, what is happening to sugar farmers, maize farmers in the country. We're going to get to fuel in just a moment. But even the corruption cases that we're seeing, critics will say all this, the reason why it's happening, especially to this magnitude, is because Kenya no longer has an opposition party. There's no watchdog. What do you say to those critics?
Kenya has an opposition, all right? And I have been very candid and honest enough to Kenyans to say that what we are going through is a situation where the opposition was rattled.
As NASA.
Okay, as NASA. And we have seen the circumstances around the politics sending a very conflicting message to the NASA legislators and also to the NASA county assembly members in certain areas. So we need to re-engineer ourselves, retrace our steps as Kenyans, and to say that opposition is good for the country. Opposition is a necessity for this country. And we must find ways of making sure that the opposition works. The only difference, which I strongly believe in, is that Kenyans must also now shift from perceiving opposition as an expression of violence, as an expression of hooliganism, for them to believe that there is opposition. We must look at it in the context of alternative policies, alternative positions, criticism for corrective purposes. This is what we need to look at. And that is why I say that as ANC, we launched NASA. We were committed to an ideal that strengthens democratic processes. And I would like, and I've been urging our members of parliament, that there is no shame in being in opposition. Take it as a responsibility, also recognized in the Constitution, and work for Kenyans.
So if ANC was to walk out today out of the NASA marriage, would it still be firm, independent, and still be a strategic and influential voice?
We are, at this point in time, speaking as ANC, and we seem to be speaking more like the opposition than any other of our sister parties at this point in time. But as a founding member of NASA, the position you must take is that you do not bring a baby to light and then you become the person to suffocate your child. So that is a principle that we take as NASA. But I think going forward, I'd like to tell our MPs here, let us be firm, let us be serious. Kenyans voted for you to go and legislate and also to take care of their interests. This must become more manifest than we are seeing today.
And if Raila Odinga was to vie for 2022, would you support him?
I think this conversation, and I've said it before, I'd rather speak my space. I'm not here to speak for Raila Odinga. So if you don't mind, I'd be so happy if we can move on to the issues so that we shift from discussing personalities.
All right, speaking of issues, the legislators, we saw what has been happening with fuel. These are members of parliament. Back in 2013, they decided to come up with a new tax, especially on petroleum products. It was exempted for 3 years. We pushed it to another 2 years, and those 2 years ended on the 31st of August, 2018. As of 1st of September, Kenyans are having to dig deeper into their pockets. The cost of living has increased. What options does President Uhuru Kenyatta have to make sure that, yes, Kenyans still live within their means, but at the same time, he achieves his legacy, which is the Big Four agenda?
That's a very interesting question and very important. First of all, let me just put it this way, that fuel is not a luxury commodity. Fuel is a necessity. It is a cross-cutting commodity or fuel, a cross-cutting item required in all our lives. Every day, every minute, it is so important. So we should not treat fuel and the taxation policies around fuel as if you're taxing some luxurious commodity, maybe a motor vehicle of high caliber or some fancy clothes and so forth. This is people's lives. So on this one, I think the message that should get out to President Uhuru is that his government has made a mistake. His government has erred in the sense that they have not been living within their means as a government. And because of their largesse and because of the programs they have where they want to have massive budgets presented in trillions, Yet they know very well that they don't have the ability to fund that budget. Is very unfortunate. So to ask Kenyans to live within their means, and yet you as a government, you're not living within your means, is really out of line.
And speaking on that note, Honorable Mudavadi, listen to this. When it comes to gasoline prices in Africa, Kenya now seems to be the highest, of course, with the new 125 Kenyan shillings. But for a country like Nigeria, which is 41, fine, we might argue that they are an oil-rich nation. But take a look at Ethiopia. 68 Kenyan shillings. For Botswana, an entire landlocked country that is mostly a desert country, 77 Kenyan shillings. Chad, 92 Kenyan shillings. Here we are as a nation at 125, especially now with the fact that we are drilling oil. What are we doing wrong? What is the Kenyan government doing wrong? Because the other African countries seem to be running on less than 50 Kenyan shillings. Egypt, 43.
Frankly speaking, they're living beyond their means. This is what is happening to the Kenyan people,
so as a
to the Kenyan government.
As a former,
you see, when you look at those price comparisons,
right.
And indeed they're alarming. How do you get your fuel landed in? A liter is at about 58 shillings in Kenya. Then you have the
levies,
the margins.
Right.
There are margins for the dealers and the importers and all that, maybe about 14 shillings. So all this comes to about 73 shillings or thereabout. Then the government now puts on levies and taxes to the tune of 56 shillings, almost matching, almost at par, the cost of the landed and all the government taxes. It's outrageous. They are overtaxing the Kenyan people. And in this context, they are misusing the fact that fuel is a necessity, and they're punishing everybody for it.
As a former Minister of Finance, what would you advise President Uhuru Kenyatta?
First of all, if you want to bring in VAT, I think they should have actually talked of the need to lower the top rate or the VAT rate. They could have negotiated, whether it is with the IMF or with the people, bring that VAT rate to a lower rate, maybe 12%.
Or scrap it.
No. The country needs revenue. And then now I have to talk clearly as somebody who has to help the country. You lower the VAT rate, bring it something like 12%, perhaps even 10%, so that now if it is cutting across, then you're mitigating. And why do I make this rationale or this particular position? Because the higher taxes become, the higher the propensity to evade tax. And we don't even have to go to Botswana. What is happening at the border in Busia, whether it is Malaba or Busia town itself? Why is the Kenyan motorist driving into Uganda to get the fuel? Uganda is a landlocked country as well. Their fuel has to pass through Kenya.
They're still selling it less than us.
And they're still selling it less than us. Okay? So here is a situation, very practical example, where the motorist has already started evading tax by just simply going across, fueling his car and coming back.
But not all Kenyans
It could also start, we are also legitimizing smuggling in a very indirect way, because we are making it impossible for the Kenyan to survive. And frankly speaking, when I said this is not a luxury, there's so many, the spiral effect, the inflationary effect is too high. The government is suppressing demand. It's going to suppress demand in this country. And the consequences are severe. Unemployment will mount.
Right. Businesses will close.
Businesses will close. Even the basics, even the campaign for environmental protection will not materialize, because fuel is key even to the mama who is cooking chakula for you.
Will the oil in Turkana save us, Honorable Mudavadi?
No, the oil in Turkana will not save us at this point in time. I think what will save us at this point in time is a situation where Uhuru comes back, takes heed of the cries of the Kenyan people.